Welcome to another episode of Stick Shift Stories. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a deep look at the GMT800 SUVs, namely the Tahoe and the Suburban. And we want to know, are these truck-based full-size SUVs any good? Are they reliable? Are they worth your money? Stay tuned because this is going to be a superb episode. While the history of the Suburban dates all the way back to around 1934, the first generation Tahoe was introduced as a 1995 model and was based on the GMT800 full-size truck platform. This turned out to be a really good move for General Motors, as a lot of wealthy consumers were gravitating towards the Suburban and Tahoe. Consumers loved the very nice styling, the tough truck underpinnings, the great selection of engines, and the overall high usability of these vehicles. GM saw a really good opportunity and continued to make the Tahoe and Suburban for the 2000 model year. When first introduced, the design differences were really noticeable. The new GMT800 series SUVs offered a much more soft and sculpted look. They also had a domed roofline that was a lot better for the second and third row passengers because it gave them extra headroom. Overall, you could say that the styling was evolutionary and not radically changed. In fact, all of the sheet metal was brand new, and the entire vehicle looked much more smoother with a strong emphasis on aerodynamics. All of the sharp edges were rounded out, and most noticeable were the new headlights on these brand new GMT800 series SUVs. The Tahoe's wheelbase was 116 inches and the Suburban's wheelbase was 130 inches, effectively making the Suburban 2 feet longer in the back than a Tahoe. GMC's version of the Tahoe and the Suburban were the Yukon and the Yukon XL. The main differences were the hood, headlights, grille, and front bumpers. Tahoes were only available in half-ton configurations, whereas the Suburban was available in half-ton and 3/4-ton configurations. The conservative styling of the GMT800 SUVs has aged really well, and they still look good today. In terms of exterior problems, there are some main things to be mindful of. Number one is rust. Unfortunately, these trucks do like to get rusty, especially in climates where they use chemicals or salt to get rid of the snow and ice during inclement weather. Therefore, it's really important that you get down on your knees and take a good look at the undercarriage, around the wheel arches, and any other areas where damage could occur due to rust and corrosion. If you notice that there's quite a bit of rust on the body panels, make sure that you take a long, hard look at the frame. If the body is rusty, it generally means that the frame will be pretty rusty as well. Be mindful of the alloy wheels because they do like to peel and corrode over time. Ultimately, if you're looking at purchasing one of these trucks, make sure that you take a good long hard look in the used car market and find the cleanest, best maintained example that you can. Because more and more affluent buyers were attracted to the Tahoe and the Suburban, General Motors had a real push to make their interiors more comfortable, more user-friendly, and finally, more attractive for families. Controls were now mounted closer to the driver's seat, and GM's use of expansive windows ensured that the visibility out of the Tahoe and the Suburban was very good. This combination of practicality, good visibility, and an overall emphasis on driver and passenger comfort really helped General Motors attract a loyal client base for the Tahoe and the Suburban. Controls were well laid out with the radio on top of the HVAC controls, a full complement of gauges that were easy to read and understand, and a great overall level of comfort with supportive seats. Some gripes included the overall fit and finish and quality of the materials, but overall, the interior was a nice place to spend time. If you're considering the purchase of one of these trucks, there are some things to be mindful of when it comes to the interior. First, you'll want to take a good look at the overall finish of the dashboard, the seats, and all of the trim. The seats are known to crack, especially at the entry points for the passengers and the driver, and the dash can peel and fade. Another thing that can peel and fade are the buttons and controls for the radio and the HVAC system. If your instrument cluster has no illumination, or you're noticing some other weird interior electrical problems, it could be the headlight switch. If you notice a clunking from your steering wheel when turning left or right, it could be your intermediate steering shaft. Now, some ways to remedy this problem include removing the factory unit, greasing it, and reinstalling it, or getting an aftermarket unit. Some aftermarket units have an updated design with a grease fitting that should help alleviate that problem in the future. If your speedometer or any of your other gauges are not working properly, it could either be the sending units for the sensors or the gauge cluster itself has gone bad. There are some services out there that'll rebuild or repair your cluster. The blend door actuators are a known problem area, and unfortunately, if you do have to replace one of these, it involves removing the complete dashboard to get at this part. The part isn't expensive, but all of the labor to replace it is. The GMT800 series sported a very nice selection of engines and transmissions. They employed the latest version at the time of Chevy's small block V8 engine family. These were Generation 3 overhead valve engines, and they were the best yet. In fact, they rivaled the competitors' overhead cam engines for smoothness and efficiency. The new 4.8-liter version cranked out 275 horsepower, and the 5.3-liter version cranked out 285 horsepower. Optional on the Suburban 3/4 ton was a 6-liter engine making 335 horsepower, and a huge 8.1-liter engine making a staggering 447 pound-feet of torque. Based on options, engines, and specs, there were different variations of a 4-speed automatic transmission available. There was the 4L60E, the 4L65E, just for the Denali, the 4L80E, just for the 2500 series with a 6-liter engine, and the 4-speed 4L85E with the 2500 mated to the 8.1-liter engine. If you're looking at purchasing a 2001 through 2006 model, be very mindful about the Castech heads. They can crack, which can cause a mysterious coolant leak or other drivability issues to appear. And because these GM trucks use Dex-Cool coolant, it can really damage the engine if that happens. On the 5.3-liter engine, there's 2 telltale signs that you have a Castech head. If the head has a casting number of 706 or 862, and if you open up the valve cover and notice this stamp on the head, it's a Castech unit. Heads with casting numbers of 706 or 862 are problematic. And if you're looking to replace the heads on your 5.3-liter engine, it's recommended to change them to either a 241, 243, 799, or 317 stamped head. If you notice that you have the oil pressure low light illuminated on the cluster, it's generally the oil pressure sending unit. While this part isn't expensive, it's generally in a really hard to reach location, and it will require a special tool. You'll need to locate a J41742 tool or similar deep socket tool to be able to remove the item easily. If you notice a cold rough idle that diminishes when the engine warms up, and you have the following diagnostics codes P0171, P0174, P0300, random misfire at idle, it could be that the intake gasket seals are leaking around the intake ports, causing a lean condition within the engine. Take a good look at the fuel and the brake lines. GMT800 series SUVs have been known to have really rusty lines. If you have rusty lines, there are kits out there that are pre-bent that you can get to replace them. However, if you're driving and you lose a brake line, it could be a dangerous situation. The Suburban and Tahoe used a new 5-link independent rear suspension that GM said contributed to a better ride and handling than any vehicle in its class. However, the front suspension was still very conventional in design. To save space, the Tahoe used torsion bars instead of coil springs, and the conventional ladder frame was fully boxed in the midsection for maximum rigidity, while the front and rear portions were shaped by the same hydroforming technique used to make Corvette frames. On the Suburban, there was an optional premium ride suspension which featured hydraulically controlled rear self-leveling springs to keep the Suburban at normal ride height even when it was carrying really heavy loads. One optional feature that was pretty rare was the 4-wheel steering system, which really helped reduce the turning circle of these big trucks. If you come across a truck that says service 4-wheel drive, or immediately gets put into 4-wheel drive high or low when it started, it may be due to a couple of things. You may need to replace the transfer case motor, or the transfer case encoder ring and the actuator seal. Usually, once these are replaced, the 4-wheel drive system will work normally. Aside from choosing the trim level and if you wanted a 4-wheel drive setup, there were a lot of great options on offer with the GMT800 series full-size SUVs. Take for example the roof-mounted DVD system, the available tri-zone automatic climate control system, the premium sound systems, leather seating surfaces with a leather-wrapped steering wheel, heated seats, an abundance of different colors, and if you really wanted a fully loaded model, check out the GMC Denali. After all of this information, what is my verdict on the GMT800 series SUVs? Well, they're great trucks. They have great engines, a lot of different wonderful options, and they're really roomy and comfortable for the whole family. I give them 8 out of 10 burnouts. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you for the next video.